She was just 12, flying alone in thrift store sneakers. By the end of the flight, she'd saved a millionaire's life. She sat so still, you'd think she was carved out of the seat. Seat 2B, first row of first class, a place no one like her usually ended up. But there she was, Zariah Coleman, 12 years old, her shoes a half size too small, hoodie sleeves fraying at the cuffs, and fingers wrapped tight around a second-hand paperback with the title peeling off the spine. She didn't look left or right. She didn't even take off her backpack. It sat on her lap like a shield. Flying scared her, sure, but not in the way you'd think. It wasn't the altitude or the idea of falling. It was being seen, stared at, judged. She didn't belong here, and she knew it. She was supposed to be in coach, row 18. But a last-minute seat shuffle, something about an overbooked row, had landed her in first class. Next to a man who looked like he hadn't spoken to a stranger in years, Charles Denning, white, late 60s, wore a watch that cost more than her mom made in 6 months. His shirt was crisp, his shoes clean, and his eyes tired in the way rich people's eyes get, like they've seen too much and felt too little. He didn't look at her at first, just sat down, pulled out his tablet, and started scrolling. Zariah glanced at him from the corner of her eye. She didn't recognize him, not really, but he had the kind of face that made her nervous, not because he looked mean, because he looked important, the kind of man people don't say no to, the kind of man who never has to explain himself. The engine hummed, the plane taxied, and her grip on her book tightened. She wasn't even supposed to be flying at all. Her mom, Tamika Coleman, had saved every dime she could for over a year just to get her this trip. Baton Rouge to Cedar Rapids, a birthday gift. Visiting her Aunt Diane, who Zariah hadn't seen in almost 4 years, was supposed to be something simple, just a little adventure. Her mom had said, "Every girl deserves a little freedom, baby, even just for a few days." But Zariah hadn't felt free since they left the house. She kept thinking she'd do something wrong, sit in the wrong place, say the wrong thing, get asked to move, that someone would look at her and decide she was in the way. The plane started to lift. Her stomach dipped. Her throat felt tight. Still, she didn't say a word. She stared at the tiny seat screen ahead of her. Charles exhaled deeply next to her and muttered something under his breath. She didn't catch it. Then, a few minutes into the flight, the strangest thing happened. Charles finally looked at her. Not a long look, just enough to see her face. Then he blinked, shook his head slightly like he'd seen a ghost, and turned back to his tablet. Zariah didn't know why, but something about that glance made her shiver. Not in a scary way, in a pay attention kind of way. She thought maybe he was just one of those people who didn't like kids. Or maybe he didn't like flying either. But she had no idea, no way of knowing, that in less than an hour, that same man would be fighting for his life. And she'd be the only one who noticed. But she didn't know any of that yet. All she knew was that the man beside her looked tired, and the sky outside the window looked too big to hold her weight. It took 20 minutes before Zariah relaxed her grip on the book. She didn't open it, just held it in her lap, like something to do with her hands. The plane had leveled off, the seatbelt light was off, and the hum of the engines, steady now, felt almost like background noise. Charles still hadn't said a word. He had earbuds in now, tapping slowly on his screen. Zariah peeked once. Some finance app she didn't understand, red and green lines jumping all over the place. She looked away quickly. She didn't want him thinking she was nosy. The flight attendant came down the aisle with drinks. Her name tag read Sonia, and her hair was pulled back tight. When she got to Zariah and Charles, she smiled politely. "Can I get you something to drink?" Zariah hesitated. Apple juice? If that's okay?" "It's more than okay," Sonia said, pouring from a little plastic bottle into a cup with ice. "Here you go, sweetheart." Charles didn't look up. "Club soda, no ice." Sonia nodded, poured it, and moved on. Zariah sipped slowly. The bubbles made her eyes water. She held the cup with both hands like it might disappear. It was quiet between them for a while. Then Charles pulled out a small bottle from his coat pocket, tiny, dark green cap. He twisted it open, shook out 2 white pills, and tossed them in his mouth. No water. Zariah didn't mean to stare, but he caught her. "It's just aspirin," he said, almost gruffly. "I get tension headaches." "Oh," she replied, unsure if she was supposed to respond. He turned back to his screen, but something in his expression had changed. Softer, less guarded. You flying alone? He asked. Zariah nodded. My mom dropped me off. I'm going to see my aunt. Charles raised an eyebrow. How old are you? 12. Brave, he muttered, glancing out the window. There was an awkward silence. Then he surprised her again. You like reading? She looked down at the book in her lap. Yeah, kind of. My aunt gave me this one last Christmas. What is it? She held it up. Because of Mr. Terupt. The cover was bent, the corners curling up. Good book? I guess. The teacher in it reminds me of somebody. He nodded slowly. I used to read. Don't make time for it anymore. She wanted to ask him what he used to read, but she didn't. Something told her he wasn't the kind of man who liked questions. He leaned back and closed his eyes. For the next 20 minutes, Zariah read, or tried to, but she kept glancing over. Charles shifted in his seat a lot, pressed 2 fingers to his temple, rubbed his neck. His lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. It was small at first, barely anything. But then it happened again. He took another deep breath, this one sharper. His hand moved to his chest. Zariah's eyes widened. She didn't speak, just watched. His fingers were twitching now. He shifted again, leaned forward slightly, and took another long, unsteady breath. This time it came out ragged, almost like a cough. Zariah's mother had once told her, if someone presses their chest and their eyes go foggy, don't wait. Say something. She reached toward the call button, but just before she pressed it, Charles opened his eyes and looked at her. He didn't look like the same man. His face was pale, too pale. His lips were losing color, and the way he looked at her, like he was about to fall through the floor. Then his mouth moved, one word, help. But no one else saw it. No one else heard it. And Zariah knew. If she didn't do something now, he wouldn't make it. Zariah didn't think. She hit the call button with the flat of her palm, hard. Then she stood up, shaking, and turned to the aisle, her voice small but urgent. Excuse me, something's wrong with him. Sonia, the flight attendant, was already walking briskly back up the aisle. What's going on? Zariah stepped aside, heart hammering in her chest. He can't breathe right. I think it's his heart. Charles was hunched over now, elbows digging into his knees, trying to stay upright. But his hands were trembling, and a thin sheen of sweat had started to form along his hairline. Sonia knelt beside him. Sir, can you tell me what's wrong? Charles shook his head slightly, breath short and shallow. Tight, chest, dizzy. Zariah spoke fast, almost stumbling over her own words. My mom works at St. Joseph's. She says if someone clutches their chest and gets pale, it could be a heart attack. You're supposed to give aspirin. Fast. Sonia looked at her, surprised, then turned to another attendant. Tell the pilot we need to land. Emergency code 7500. Medical on standby. And find aspirin. Passengers nearby started to murmur. Some stood up, craning their necks to see what was going on. Zariah didn't notice. She was focused on Charles. His hands had slid off his knees now. He was leaning back, eyelids fluttering. I got him, she whispered, barely audible. Then she took off her hoodie and bunched it behind his neck like a pillow. You have to stay upright. That's what Mama says. Helps the blood flow. Sonia came back with a little white packet. Crush this and make him chew it. Zariah opened it with shaky hands and gently put the aspirin in Charles's mouth. You gotta chew, okay? Please. Charles managed a small bite. His jaw moved like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're making an emergency landing in Memphis. Please remain seated. The cabin got quiet real fast. People whispered. Someone asked if the man had passed out. Another muttered something about always flying private next time. Zariah didn't care. She didn't move from Charles's side. She kept talking softly. You're gonna be okay. They're landing the plane now. My mom's friend, Ms. Latrice, had this too. They got her to the hospital and she was fine. You just gotta hold on, mister. You just gotta stay awake. Charles's eyes blinked slowly. He looked at her like she wasn't real, like maybe she was a memory from a long time ago. But he held on. The wheels hit the ground hard. The whole cabin jolted. Within seconds of stopping on the tarmac, paramedics came rushing in through the front. One of them, a bald man in his 30s, dropped to one knee beside Charles and started asking rapid-fire questions. Name? Do you know where you are? Can you feel this? Sonia briefed them while Zaria stepped back, arms crossed tight over her chest, shivering now in just her t-shirt. Charles barely responded, but his eyes stayed open. The paramedics got him onto a stretcher and wheeled him out, oxygen mask in place. Zaria watched, frozen. She didn't even realize she'd been holding her breath until he was gone. The plane sat silent. Nobody said much, until a woman in 3A spoke up. "Was that you who noticed it?" Zaria turned. "Huh? You the one who called for help?" Zaria just nodded. Another passenger, a younger man, muttered, "She might have saved his life." The flight attendant came over, placed a hand on Zaria's shoulder. "You did real good, honey. Real good." Zaria looked down. Her hands were shaking again. Not from fear now, but from something else. Something bigger. Like she wasn't sure what had just happened, only that it mattered. Sonia wrapped a blanket around her. "You sit tight. We'll be in the terminal soon." Zaria nodded and looked back at the seat where Charles had been. There was a napkin on the tray, folded. She reached over and picked it up. There was something written in tiny, shaky handwriting. "Tell my daughter I forgive her. Tell her I'm sorry." Zaria stared at the words. She didn't know what they meant, but they felt heavy, like they weren't meant for her. But she was the only one who could carry them now. But before she could ask what to do with it, someone tapped her shoulder and said, "He wants to see you." The air in the terminal was colder than it should have been. Zaria stepped off the plane clutching the napkin, her fingers tight around it like it might blow away if she let go. Sonia walked beside her, one hand on her back, guiding her gently. The Memphis airport was half silent, half chaotic. A medical team wheeled Charles away through a set of double doors, disappearing into a hallway that smelled like disinfectant and worry. Flashing lights from the emergency crew bounced off the glass. A few curious travelers watched from behind velvet ropes, whispering to each other. Zaria stood still. She didn't know where to go, or what came next. Sonia knelt down to her level. "Sweetheart, someone from the airline's coming to talk to you, all right? They might have questions." Zaria looked down at the floor. "Am I in trouble?" Sonia frowned. "What?" "No, baby. You helped someone. A lot of grown folks wouldn't have done what you did." Zaria didn't answer. She was starting to feel the come down, that dizzy, slow-motion feeling that comes after everything hits at once. Her legs felt weak. Her mind was spinning. Someone called her name. "Zaria Coleman?" She turned. A tall woman in a dark blue blazer approached. She wore a laminated badge and had a clipboard in hand. "Hi, I'm Kim. I'm with the airline. Are you okay? Do you need anything?" Zaria hesitated. "No, ma'am, I'm fine." Kim smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Can you walk with me a second? Just a few questions. Then we'll get you situated." Zaria followed her to a quiet seating area past gate B12. The chairs were all empty. Kim sat down first, crossed her legs, and leaned in. "Do you know the man's name? The one sitting next to you?" "Charles, that's all I know." "Did he say anything strange before the emergency?" Zaria pulled out the napkin. "He wrote this right before they took him." Kim took it, eyes scanning the shaky letters. Her expression didn't change, but her posture did. He said, "Tell my daughter I forgive her. Tell her I'm sorry." "That's what this says?" Zaria nodded. Kim stared at it like it was a puzzle missing half the pieces. Then she folded it gently and slipped it into a folder. "Thank you." Zaria's hands were now balled in her lap. Is he gonna die?" Kim paused. "They're doing everything they can, but if you hadn't acted when you did, he might not have made it off that plane." Zaria looked down. A new voice cut through the room. "She the one who helped him?" A woman with silver curls and a tablet in hand walked in, flanked by two men in suits. She looked important, and she walked like she had somewhere else to be. Kim stood. "Yes, this is Zaria." The woman crouched to meet her eye level. "Hi, sweetheart, I'm Angela, Mr. Denning's assistant." Zaria's eyes widened. "Denning?" Angela smiled. "Charles Denning. He runs Denning Global, big investment company." Zaria didn't understand most of that, but she understood the weight behind the words. She'd seen his face before on a magazine once in a waiting room. She remembered now. Angela softened. "He's awake, and he asked for you." Zaria's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Kim spoke up. "We can get her there. Her guardian just needs to give approval. Already called her mother, Angela said.